So that's how I got to the point of actually building the model, and the model was built very similar to this. I cut my pieces of, I used 1/8 inch plywood, it's called door skin, and I made the piece 40 equivalent. This is scale of 1 inch per foot, this is scale of a 1/2 inch per foot. But like I said, I joined them at the bow with string through holes. Same thing with the transom. And I made the bulkhead with actual little framing on it, forced it in position, and then measured and made my other bulkheads. And from the measurements from that is where I got the measurements to draw my bulkhead plans. And then I forced that spreader forward to spread the foredeck. And that's how I got the shape of this hull. And as I had a whole winter to entertain myself, so I put in ribs and framing and bottom stringers, and almost all the pieces that are in the boat are in this. And that way, if I run into any problems that I would have building, I'd rather have the problems on this scale than with the full-size boat. And if you scrap a little piece of little square plywood like that, it's a lot better than scrapping a big 4x8 sheet of expensive plywood. And what I learned from building this, I ended up drawing these plans, positioning my bulkheads, and ended up with having 6.5 foot long cabin. The bow here grew. I had extra room on the stringers, and like I mentioned before, when it was actually in the form and upside down, the bow looked like a little more rake would be nice, and I had the extra room. So I used the extra room I had on this to extend this 4 inches past here, actually 4 inches on the side, and even extended this a little bit. The boat grew to 25 feet, and it let me push this spreader further forward, get a little more room here, a little more steeper sides, and it eased the pressure on bending the stringers around, and it just made everything better. So it's now going to be a 25-foot boat. A little different angle here. And so what I need to do is actually take measurements off the hull itself as it's being built and redraw the plans to reflect how the boat is exactly being built. So that's actually how this boat got to be designed. Then came the really fun part. Sea trials, for the model that is. Testing the model to see how she reacts in the real world of water and wind and waves, and just what does this thing do in the water? How stable is it? How maneuverable will it be? How does it ride a sea? And that was the really fun part. And as soon as spring hit, I was out in the creeks and the lakes with this model. And that was actually quite a bit of fun.
This was my boatyard on the workbench. You can see the little cardboard model on the right, a masonite model down below, and then the final model on the bench. I even fiberglassed this one. She performed really well in the creeks. You can see how that flare makes a really nice bow wave. She was very stable in rough water. She wouldn't roll over unless I forcibly held her upside down. This is anchored in a 1-foot wind wave, which simulates a 12-foot sea in scale. The model performed so well, it was time to start building the big boat. I built the bulkheads on a ranch in Newcastle, Wyoming. Started setting it up in the backyard of the house where I'd been living in Upton, Wyoming. The building stocks were two 16-foot 2x8s set on railroad ties. Got the wood for my stringers and temporarily fastened them together. And set up the bulkheads and the transom and ran the stringers. Could finally see the lines of the boat, what she was going to look like. I built the transom framing in Jan's garage in Billings, Montana, and found the wood for the floor timbers and the ribs, and all the wood went into storage because we weren't sure where we were going to end up. Well, where we ended up was Whitewood, South Dakota. We bought a house with a half-acre of land in this huge shop. So it was time to start building the Jani Jay.